hour of 8:30 having arrived, I will call this meeting of the Trempealeau County Property Committee to order. We have a 13-item agenda.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Well, we've got a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. Open meeting law requirements have been met through proper posting. You've received the minutes of the previous meeting. I will entertain a motion to adopt those minutes as distributed. Nobody wants to make that a motion?
Motion. Motion.
Is there a second? I'll second it.
I left
Oh,
mine.
you did?
Yeah.
I didn't hear
I
you.
left mine at home. So
We got a motion and a second. All in favor
Gotta put
signify
'em in
by
there.
saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
I
sign.
left mine
Carried.
at home too, Doc.
Members of the public will have a 15-minute block of time to comment on today's agenda items, either in person or via phone. The phone number to use is 715-538-1770. Next is Samuel's group. Take it away, Kurt.
Morning, everyone. I handed out a drawing set here for you, and to give you an update on the renovation portion in regards to options, and then look for some direction to move forward with. The first page, obviously, is your lower level where we're sitting right now. You can see that the community TV is staying where it's located down here, and we're not doing any work on this lower level. And just remember that this was an approach to do a minimal amount of work as possible, but still be able to get departments into spaces that would work for them. So next page, if you want to switch pages there. Again, existing is on the left-hand side, renovation is on the right-hand side. It didn't show up as nicely as I wanted to, but I had Venture darken up the walls that were going to be new walls on the colored area. So you can see that the color coding is the departments and where they're located on that first floor. So ADRC and veterans actually have them very close to the same color, but they're on that connection point between the addition and the existing building. And then you look at the color coding. I won't walk you through each one, but this first floor here shows that we're getting that corridor widened and connection between the addition and to the existing building, so it gives us that flow of traffic into the existing structure. There is a fair amount of dark walls, so new walls that are on that ADRC side. The veteran side that's there really remains untouched. Those walls are there and they're existing. Howdy?
Yeah, Kurt, I see you made that hallway a lot bigger than we were talking about.
Yep.
But when you get to the very end there,
Yep.
before you go into the health, human services, is that going to be wide enough for wheelchairs in there? Or how-
It will
are we
be
gonna
wide
have to
enough
do
for
some there?
wheelchairs. One of the things that I have them checking right there is that is a rated wall, or will have to be a rated wall. So we need to figure out what the width of that needs to be. So we'll make it as wide as we can.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you can see the
looks like it
difference.
chokes down.
It looks like the way it was before, and that's why
Yep.
we had it, yeah, okay.
Correct.
That door right there, it's gonna be changed, or is it the existing door that's gonna stay there?
Right now, they're showing existing.
Yeah,
So-
which is a big door. That should be big enough.
As long as it's, yeah. we were looking
Yeah,
at it,
so,
remember?
so before
It
we
should
get
be
in,
okay, I think.
before we get into
Yeah.
details, I want you guys to understand, this is merely conceptual, okay? What we would need to do from this point is then engage the architect to actually finalize the floor plan. I had them get this to bare bones of if everybody could fit in here, right? To give you an idea of a rough budget. And my budget, actually, I'm gonna give you as a range, because there's a lot of decisions that we can make in regards to what do we do for these spaces, okay? So before we get into moving doors around, that would be the next phase of design. We would actually go through the same process that we did with the Justice Center, where we would have design meetings. You guys can attend them, the departments would attend them, we would actually finalize that floor plan. This is a starting point, right, so that we can establish a budget and some parameters around that, but all good questions. The purple area, which ends up becoming human services, which is basically that east wing of the existing building, you can see that there's some dark walls that are added in there. There are
a few that needed to be added because we had to have private offices constructed in there. But again, it's largely remains untouched in regards to the layout and the configuration that's there. And then obviously UW extension and then the maintenance area down there are just fitting into spaces that are already existing. Okay, so again, minimal approach for this floor. Turn to the next page, gives you the second floor. You can see that this connecting, I call it the north annex, but the north portion of the existing building, you can see that that corridor really becomes much more open from what is there now. And then there's a fair amount of open space that connects them, but the offices that are on the south side of that wall remain untouched. There are several offices, which would be in the treasurer and county clerk's area, that aren't touched, but there are some interior layouts that need to be renovated. So there would be casework and some countertops that would be put into the county clerk. So there's some work in that county clerk and treasurer space that need to be done with some existing walls. The lion's share of the renovations that are going to happen on this second floor is really in the health area and in the land management piece. And essentially what that is, it's because they're open rooms. Right now you've got large courtrooms that are there and they need to be infilled to be able to give these workspaces, okay? Down below at Human Services, Human Resources and Corp Counsel are basically coming into the existing DA's office there. Hardly any work being done in that space. And then the information or IT area, there is limited work being done there as well. So what I struggled with budgeting, again, this is what we had to budget off of, and I had our estimators kind of go through and do lineal footage of the walls that are there for renovation on each one of these areas. And the question came up in regards to what are we doing with finishes in some of these spaces. So if we go back, let's just look at the county clerk because we're right here. You can see that the county clerk and the treasurer and those spaces in there, there's a lot of rooms that just aren't touched. They're moving in an office that's existing. So my estimating team is like, so are we going to put in new floors, new ceilings, and are we painting all them so that it is a continuation of the finishes that are at the Justice Center? And my answer to them is, I don't know. It's going to be a decision from the owner to make that determination, right? But there are some spaces in here where obviously when we go through and we put this corridor in here, there's going to be new walls, there's going to be new ceilings. We're going to have to relocate some mechanical and electrical elements that are in the ceiling. Not that we would put new units in, but distribution and raceways and those sorts of things would have to be retrofit, right? And that's the same thing with the first floor. So if you look at the first floor with ADRC and veterans, the veterans is largely untouched. So the question would be, do those offices just stay the way they are and are they moving in? Or are we going to give them an upgrade in regards to painting walls, putting new ceilings, putting in new floors? What does that look like? I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you for that today because you don't know the numbers. But then we have to talk about phasing. So what is a bare minimum of what needs to be done? Are you unable to hear me?
No, you're
No,
good.
okay,
I'm just
all right.
talking.
So the question would be, how do we go about phasing this? And that was one of the things Dick had asked about, right? So if you look at ADRC and the veterans on first floor, second floor, county clerk, and treasurer, those spaces, obviously those are not the departments that are in those spaces right now. So what we run into is that we're going to finish up the Justice Center. We're going to have to make that connection, and then before we can make that connection and do this renovation, we've got to displace those departments somewhere. So the easy process would be when the Justice Center is completed, largely that second floor becomes vacant because most of the people that are on second floor are moving next door, right? So the phasing process would be that we look for temporary homes on that second floor if we're going to only focus on this little connecting piece, right? Because there was a discussion that take an approach that we know we have to do some work on the connecting north annex to be able to get that where we need to be. And then the rest of the areas, let's do minimal amount of work in there, right? So if we focus on that as a bid process, we still need to displace those departments, which would mean we're going to have temporary accommodations for those departments that are in that north annex, which would be health, which should be land, all those, UW extension, all those elements that, we have to find some temporary location for them, right? Which, there's a cost to that. The other flip side of that could be, is if we phased it, that rather than moving them temporarily, do we invest money in that court area and renovate that court area as a phase one, and then move them into that space, and then after they're into their new location, now we do the work in the North Annex, and then we do that work, right? So it's complicated in regards to how do we go about giving you a budget or parameters of how we get to that point. I can tell you right now that if we looked at just the ADRC and the Veteran Service, that small block that's there and creating that corridor, and you go up on second floor and we say, we're gonna create that corridor, and we do bare minimum, which would mean do the demolition, do the mechanical and electrical to make those changes in there, and do minimal finishes on those walls, we're probably gonna spend about $500,000 on that piece of that puzzle over there, okay? Now, that's bare minimum, right? Now, if we come in and we say we're gonna upgrade and put all of those finishes to match the new addition, that number then can bounce up to that $800,000 to $900,000 real quickly, because we're upgrading finishes on that entire space, right? If we do all the renovation on the east wing that is on each one of those locations, we're probably looking to spend another $1 million to $1.5 million, okay? That's if you do it all. Here would be my recommendation, because these are conceptual drawings. My recommendation would be, if we all agree that these are where the departments are going to go, get that line kind of drawn in the sand, which I can tell you right now, I think most departments are in agreement that this layout, conceptual layout, works for them. Then we would then come back to you as a group and say, okay, let's go into the next phase of design. And at that point, I want you to understand, these layouts may be tweaked. What's going to happen is we're going to meet with each department again and go over the concept. You may see a wall that gets moved or something along those nature that those adjustments take place. But recommendation would be to design this entire renovation piece, so hire the architect to give you the design documents, and then we can bid this out in phases. Meaning that if you decided that you're only going to do the work in that north annex, we could have the contractors give us a price for that work only, right? And we can have a base bid where we're doing bare minimum without the upgrade of finishes. We could do a base bid and then have an alternate. The alternate then would come back and say, what if we did all the finishes numbers in regards to doing that small portion, right? I don't mean to complicate matters, but the phasing element comes into this, because you're going to invest some dollars to temporarily move some people. We may decide that we want to do the health department land management element as a phase one and do that work and move them in there permanently, rather than doing a temporary location. So my proposal is that we get this layout done, have the architectural team finish those bid documents. We then put a phasing plan together as a group and get those bids. Now, the timing to be able to make this happen, as we're still targeting fall occupancy for the Justice Center, is that we would need to start with those design parameters to nail that down. But the big question was, what's this number going to cost us all in, depending on what level you're going to do this? If you do all of the renovation, you're probably between $2 and $3 million if you do it all. Doesn't mean you have to do it all, but at least you'd have a strategy in regards to how do you get to that point. All right, so I know I've confused everyone, but that's kind of the position of where we are in regards to phasing, or how we could potentially break it up.
Well, may I ask a question?
Sure.
The phasing makes the most sense to me, but cost-wise, doesn't make the most sense.
Yep.
It would be less harmful. Once people move, they move into their permanent location. When this building, you weren't on the board, Dan, when they remodeled this building before, and I wasn't either, but people were.
I was here.
You were working here, yeah, that's right. People were all over town.
They still refer to it as the gold plating of the courthouse.
Yeah. And anyway, people were all over, and so they had to move at least once, if not, well, twice, at least twice, if not more.
Yeah.
That's, that's a burden.
Jeremy?
I just have a question too for you, Kurt, that may or may not complicate things in the future. Again, as I was looking at things in the past to change things in this building, we get to a certain percentage of the building that gets changed, and then we lose that grandfathered clause when it comes to fire sprinklers in the building.
Correct.
So I need to make sure that if you get to that point, because that's not up to me or your architects, I believe that's up to the state when we get to that point, and it also depends on the inspector. So it could be 30%, it could be 51%. And I've looked at sprinkler fitting this building, and that budget alone is more than what you're looking for just to remodel this building. At least the last one that I got from Fireline 4 or 5 years ago.
Correct.
That was $1.5 million because of, there is no sprinkler system in this building at all.
Correct.
There's a fire pump that we don't use, that feeds some of the stanchion pipes in the building, but I just want to make sure that that is on someone's radar, because again, I mean, we can look at these potential plans here, but if they have to get submitted to the state, and all of a sudden now they come back and say, oh, now you've also got to add sprinklers to this building, that's an additional cost that I need to make sure that is
Yep.
aware.
Yep. No, great point. The magic number that you're referring to, it's typically 50% of the floor plan in regards to what you've done to renovations. And the renovation can be determined, and Jeremy is absolutely correct. It's reviewed by the state officials in regards to what they determine is that renovation piece. If we're just upgrading finishes, that's not a consideration, right? So if we're going into a space and let's say you wanted to paint walls and ceilings and that sort of thing, it's when you start to relocate walls, do large demolition, those elements, that's when it starts to become under a different code requirement for sprinkler system. So we've carried some allowance dollars in here to be able to extend some of them, but not for the entire footprint, because we're not proposing that we're going to get to that point, because these are really a lot of finish upgrades and some minor details. But Jeremy brings up a good point. That still is subject to review by the state in regards to approval of what we do with fire protection. So, good point.
This plan here,
Yes, correct.
so we don't know if we're gonna be required.
If it's minimal, we're fine. Meaning that if we don't go in and gut the whole thing and renovate it, and we're gonna add a door here and change a wall here, we're fine, right? If we start to do some significant changes, and there is significant changes in those courts, right? We're adding some significant elements in there where it may be subject where they say, hey, we need you to extend your fire protection into that space. It's a great point.
So we don't know.
Correct, not yet. Correct. That would be part of the design process to be able to determine what's our limitations and how far do we go. So,
Just doing my part to throw another wrench.
no, it's great. I'd rather have it now. That's great discussion.
Yeah,
Nope.
Mr. Chair, if I could address another potential.
Have at her.
Okay, so if you're talking about relocating people and choosing the north wing as the first, it's not going to be easy or inexpensive to move people into the courts. We don't have network connectivity in those spaces that will accommodate workers without some heavy lifting. So it would be, from an IT perspective, doing the court suites first would provide the opportunity so that you could relocate people and then work on the north wing, because the north court suite would have to get modified to accommodate more workers.
Tim, does that mean we can't use wireless? We have to use Ethernet? Because you suggest we would put in Ethernet first?
Our current Wi-Fi isn't built to handle secure connectivity. We can force people to use the VPN and connect, but we don't find the Wi-Fi to be reliable enough to count on it for a solution. And then there's power issues in the courthouse as well. I don't know how we'd connect people, because there's no power plugs in much of that space. The new wireless solution we've purchased, and it will have that capacity going forward, but we don't currently.
So to echo Tim's concern, is that we can spend a lot of money to temporarily relocate people and say that we're just trying to minimize our scope, but it's going to be money that is kind of just thrown out the door. And that's what we need to capture in regards to the phasing elements, right? The most cost-effective way to get this project done is if everybody can just, take some time off and we give it to the contractors and have the whole building. We know that's not realistic, right? But every time we add a phase, we add dollars to a project. It is just a fact of the matter, because contractors like to come in and do as much as they can, be efficient as possible, have that space to be able to knock that out. It's just not realistic, because you got to stay functional, right? And those decisions do cost money. It's a matter of where do we want to spend that money, so.
I'm a little unclear, Tim, with what your comments were. Is the phasing going to be the problem
No.
for you?
But if you're going to temporarily relocate people.
Oh, the temporary.
You're going to run into a problem, because that north wing has a lot of workers, and we don't have a lot of spaces that are ready for workers.
okay. Well,
The ones that are being abandoned are not fit.
Yeah, that makes it clear. You just, in other words, you make that suite of offices ready, so when they move in, they can plug things in and go.
Right. We'd want it done so that
Yeah.
their permanent location is ready for them, and then that makes it a lot easier
Got
to
it.
do the north wing at that
Yeah.
point.
So the way that we have bid this sort of a strategy before is that we would have, the documents we get from Venture would have all the work included on their documents, and then we actually will break it up into phasing elements, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, whatever number of phases we determine as the ownership group, operationally, that makes some sense, and we have bidders bid on it. And then we compile it and say, if we do 2 phases, here's how much it costs. If we do 1 phase, here's how much it costs. If we do the whole thing, here's what it costs. And it's the most effective way to do it, because we are going to have to work with Tim and Jeremy on temporary costs and what does that look like with their existing systems.
So, even if you did it in one phase, you're still gonna have some temporary
Yeah.
costs.
Correct. If we said we were just going to do the north annex, and I guess that's the message I'm trying to get across here, because when I left here a few months ago, I kind of felt that we just were going to do the connecting corridor and just everybody figure it out in the east side. We can do that, but we're going to have temporary investment to get that accomplished, because we can't do all the work in there and keep those departments where they're at, right? And I don't have a firm number on what that cost is, I guess is what I'm telling you.
So we're into a phase situation one way or the other.
Correct.
The question is how many?
How many?
Now,
If
when
we
you,
can minimize them, the better we're going to do.
okay, now when you say phases, clarify that. Now, let me give you something to chew on. If the phase is simply to start, well, you're going to start here, then you go here and so forth, is that many phases? Or is it one phase? In other words, once we get started, we just keep moving from place to place until the job is complete.
When I say phase, we want to break it up that there could be a start and an ending point, meaning that if you chose you were only going to do phase 1 of a project, is that it would serve your purpose, right? You may have a phase 1 that is broke up into 2 different phases. You follow what I'm saying? Is that you have to identify if there's a point here, because I kind of get the sense, and again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, if this number is too big, we're going to pull it back, right? And only do a certain portion of the project. Somehow we have to create those bid documents so we know that actually accomplishes something. So we're not just ending in the middle of the street and we got no completion there, right? So if that meant that we were only going to do this north annex, we're going to get that done, but it's going to cost money to move people around temporarily, and then other people aren't going to have what they need in their spaces, they're not going to have for private offices. What are we giving up to do that, right? We've got to put a number on that. So to answer your question, it's a little of both. It is, we're going from one to the next, but there's also, one may have to happen before the second one can happen.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna suggest to Chair, I think what we should do is ask for a plan that says, what is the least amount of phases with the least amount of disruption to the building and the least cost? What is that?
And that's what I'm recommending, is that we're to the point where we conceptually, because before we went through this process, we really didn't have a handle on where departments were going to go, right? Now we've come to a point where I believe we understand where the departments are going to go conceptually. It's not a final design. I'm saying bring Venture on to be able to go to that next level of design. And I would propose that you hire them to design all of it, even though you may not construct all of it, but at least get it done. So that if you decided you're only going to do a portion of it, the next board, or whenever you guys decide you're going to do it, knows what was the plan to get it done. Rather than just hire, we could just hire Venture to just do the green and the yellow, right? That would make no sense. I'm proposing that we do everything in a design element, and then, and exactly what David's asking for, let's break this down into phases to what's the most cost-effective and most efficient.
Tim?
I don't mean to throw a big wrinkle in, but one of the things that's required is that this plan has to get done soon, because one of the elements that has to be considered is we need a budget for how we're going to connect these two buildings, and we're going to connect the two systems. We can't have people walking around with two different badges supporting two different lock systems, two different camera systems, two different everything. We really, the goal of the project was to make this a maintainable solution, and that's not going to be maintainable. So as soon as you get a plan, and you have a plan, then we have to start ordering stuff. Jeremy's going to need locks, we're going to need to replace the cameras, so we're going to need a budget for those pieces of equipment to tie this whole thing together, so that we're not having dispatchers have to check multiple systems. That's just not going to be viable.
But there will be there's going to be a temporary time when that's going to be the case, isn't it?
Yeah, there will be.
You can't
Yeah.
avoid that.
Correct.
But obviously, you'd like
But we
to see-
need a budget,
you'd
because
like to
these
see
things
a-
don't just appear. We needed 6 months lead time to
Yeah.
figure out what we need and then order it.
Yeah.
So we're not left holding the bag.
How soon can Venture get this put together for us?
Well, I talked to Corey initially, and he didn't really have an understanding of what scope you wanted to do. Originally, he had talked about 6 to 7 months, right, to do complete bid documents to get this done. That's doing the entire thing. If you broke it into a smaller piece, obviously it would be a smaller duration, but I've been targeting that September date to have this thing done, and he believes he can still get that done if we would tell him to move forward now.
We need to have done.
Correct. Yep.
We still have to do it.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Right now, all you would be committing to
So-
is having them design it, and then at that point, we would put it out to bid. And then we would
We
get,
can't even get the two buildings connected in time.
oh, they'll be connected. It just, Tim is saying, there's
There
gonna
won't be
be
a-
multiple systems that they're
Yeah.
not integrated. That's what we need to get to.
Okay.
And I don't have a budget for connecting the actual buildings. So we're moving our data center over to the new building. I need to connect it back to the closets over here so that people can actually still be on the same network. And that's going to have to happen before they start moving into the new building.
And the same with like the badge reading systems, I need to know what doors are gonna be where, so I need to know how many units that I need to buy for this building to connect into the new section. So will change with what design layout you guys pick. There's how many strikers and, that I can either reuse or have to purchase to make this building connect with that one. And that's just that. And then there's, like I said, again, the physical locks, the fire alarm system, everything else is gonna have to get tied back in too, so.
And panic buttons and cameras.
Well, it would make sense to me to follow Kurt's recommendation and have Venture do the entire blueprint. We can phase it once we receive that. Because of the time issue, I think that's almost mandatory. We can't be running back to Venture every time we want another phase designed. And then, now, we can bid this in segments once it's provided, is
Oh, yeah.
that what I'm hearing?
I would plan to bid it all, bid the entire scope, but have it broken down in the bid form so you can pick and choose what scope you want to incorporate in your budget.
You would like give us a bid on doing everything with paint, like you said, the painting, the ceiling, carpeting, and everything, and then one bid with just minimal.
Correct.
Okay.
That brings back another question. I think there was a question earlier from you, Kurt, about, okay, do we upgrade the finishes to match the new courthouse or not? I mean, maybe it's a question for Jeremy, since you're here.
if you're remodeling the space or remove, you know, if, like you had said, if you're turning the existing health department into, is it the treasurer, the county clerk's area, stuff like that, it would probably be preferred. But if there's nothing happening in this particular room, I've already started painting rooms in this building with the color codes that I've gotten from the painters for that building,
Well,
so.
but I think the question is like, if we're only putting up a few walls, we'll just paint it the same color that the rest of them are right now and be done with it. I mean, that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, if you're changing the north courtroom into office space and you're putting up, you know.
The whole thing.
The whole thing, then just paint it the
Yeah,
new
that
color
makes-
of the existing, of the new building. Just, if you're doing a room or a section, make that section match. Don't do it in piecework.
What's the upgrade cost? I mean,
Jeremy's example, I would agree with 100%, put the finishes in, and that's not an upgrade cost. My point would be, is that if we're gonna add a wall, let's say that we're gonna make 2 offices out of this, and we're gonna add a wall right here, are we going to patch to match the ceiling? And patch to match, do we keep the carpet on both sides? Or when we put the wall in, do we then put new ceiling, new flooring, new ceiling in that space? Because it's not needed. We need the wall and separation, we need electrical, we need data, we need HVAC, all of that, but we don't necessarily need to do the upgrade, because to your point, we're living in it now. But there's also a cost to patch to match, you know what I mean? So does it make sense to put new ceiling in? Do you put new flooring in right away?
The same print, like with the land management area right now. We put up some walls, made some offices over there, but if I would have got into a more depth in cost, well, then each one of those rooms would have had their own thermostat.
Yep.
Whereas now there's one thermostat that's in Ann's area that controls the whole area. There is 2 light switches instead of a light switch independent for each office. If Reed is there and wants a light on, well, everybody's light is on, not just that one particular office.
I mean, I would defer to Jeremy's guidance based on the recommendation of what we're gonna do. So, well, more than a third of this whole space has to be redone. Well, okay, it makes sense to redo the whole thing. But
Again, if you're redoing one whole north courtroom and turning it into offices, just everything from floor to ceiling. But if it's where IT is moving into the clerk of court's office and they're not really doing any changes, that doesn't necessarily, well, then when it gets vacated from one, my staff can just go in and paint what's existing, and then they can throw up some cubicles or something. But if you're throwing up walls, doors, we have to redo the lighting system, then yes. And that could be on something that I can sit down with them too and say, hey, let's, you know, do it in this particular fashion that makes the most sense.
I guess another comment is, I think at some point we're gonna be talking about financing. So it looks like if we'll spend $3 million to do the basics, can we find $3 million? I guess part of it is, I guess we'll have to. What do we still have in our fund?
General fund?
Yeah,
There's still about 3 million.
okay.
I think the finance piece would be something that once we brought the bids back, now you can determine what's your priority, right? I've kind of given you a range. This is on a concept, right?
Right.
When we get those bids back, let's say September, October, at that point, then you can identify what is that investment out of remaining contingency, out of whatever you may have for interest earnings on your investment. I mean, there's other things that can be evaluated. I just think it's premature to make the decisions on how far to go until we know the numbers, because the investment to have Venture do this is going to be limited to have them design it, and you haven't committed to anything other than having a document that we can bid. And at that point, then you're going to have more information to be able to make those decisions on.
Kurt, just if I remember right, the contingency on the courthouse was roughly 3 million, right?
3.5.
And
No, the contingency is $1.5 million.
Oh, the contingency.
Yeah.
originally or now?
Originally, it was.
Originally, the renovation portion, not contingency, the renovation portion was $3.5 million. We had a contingency of 1.5 that went away. We put the 1.5 back in place, and that's where the 1.5 was always a contingency. $3.5 million was a budget for doing the renovation on the existing project.
So in essence, what we're saying here is we might save $500,000.
Depends on
All we've done.
to what level you go to. Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're all on that same understanding that
Correct.
we've saved a bit, but,
Yep.
wow.
And again, you haven't committed those dollars yet.
When they do this, Kurt,
Is it- What's that?
when they do this, are they gonna, please ask them, make sure they take into effect, I look at all these new offices, that's gonna take an awful lot of power. Yeah, are we gonna have to set up a whole, I mean, you got, where you had the courtrooms, you had a couple outlets here, a couple lights there, and now you're gonna have outlet, and you're gonna have IT and everything, that's gonna add, that's gonna be costly. And just so that, do we have to have them check out to see if we got enough power, like Jeremy says, into the building, or are we gonna, it's gonna cost us more to bring in a whole.
Oh, that'll be all part of the design.
Well, just,
Absolutely.
I don't wanna have a surprise later on.
Yep.
you know?
And when it comes to power, the second floor is a lot more upgraded than, say, the basement area, so, yeah, but I'd work with
It's just
them
that,
on
there, Jeremy, you're going from one big room to 10 different offices,
Yeah,
and they're
like
all gonna
in this
have.
section here, there is one empty breaker for this particular basement. There is
Really?
30 of them on the second floor.
Oh, that's good,
So-
that's good to know,
But, yeah.
thank you.
I did. Okay, so sorry if I confused the process. I tried to break this down so you can see the phasing, but at least I think we've got some sort of a concept here that we can start with from a design element.
Does the agenda look like we can take action and give Kurt some direction on this currently?
It says possible action.
Yeah, because I would like this committee to give him direction to move forward today. And my opinion is have Venture do the entire plan, prep for bid. We've got one member missing, but
Well, just so
Any
that.
discussion
yeah,
on that
I think we
regard?
should, I think we should engage Venture to get the full scope, but I would need to make sure that we have all of the phases lined out appropriately to minimize cost prior to going to Venture, so they know exactly what they're doing.
Yep.
Yeah. But we'll get that back, did you say 6 months, or if we give it to them now, we'll get it in 2 or 3 months?
If you give us approval today, we're going to start setting up design meetings, which is going to take place over the next 6 months. So Venture will be here multiple times with department heads, with whoever you decide you want to have from this committee to attend those, with Jeremy and the group. So they'll be here to give you updates, and the phasing elements will probably be one of the early things we bring to you as to how we would break up the phasing. The scope that's shown in here, the layout, I'm going to give them direction and say, this is a starting point, and we're going to bring this to the group, and then make sure that if there aren't any tweaks or adjustments, that's where they're going to go and start to implement mechanical, electrical, right? So to your point, phasing would be in the very early part of that design process.
I'm asking because I think it's important for guys like Tim who need to budget for some things to
Yep.
get it done before budget's done in September.
Yep.
Is the cost for this design,
You need
is
it
that in the
sooner
original
than
bid?
Yeah,
So
but
it is no extra cost.
we
design.
need it for the budget.
It was
Correct.
in our budget here, not in the Justice Center. Great,
So
So-
that was in that 3.5,
correct. Yep.
which we don't really have. Oh, we got that left, that's right, yeah.
I think the intention was to use some or all of the contingency to pay for the renovation, which went out the window with the increased cost of everything.
well,
Do you need a motion then to move
Yes.
ahead as proposed?
yes, sir.
I would move that we follow his recommendation. Follow his recommendation, and I think it's primarily to ask that a design is put on paper,
Yep.
and that would be usable for bidding purposes.
I'll engage Venture and get started with the design.
Okay, that's the
We have a
motion.
motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. Construction bulletin updates.
These are some of the change orders that I was telling you that they were working on from before.
Oops, I'm sorry.
These were we've added a few since the last month. We didn't have any in January, and this is a February update. To kind of summarize, there are a few in here that were driven by the DOC. If you look at the number PC 102, that was a DOC, Department of Correction, in regards to the change of a table that was there to get that to detention grade. The one at the bottom, which is, he references Brad Hoover. Brad Hoover is a DOC inspector, so he comes through and makes inspections and needed to change the door swing and some hardware for DOC compliance, and that's the bottom one there, PCO 111. The rest of these have to deal with coordination and detailing for some of the precast and structural elements. There is one element in here in regards to the smoke separation partition for some metal studs and drywall that needed to upgrade the rating for that smoke wall on PCO 105. And then the other one is there was a roof drain that was missed by the jail entrance, and when the roofer was there, identified that with the architectural team that a roof drain would need to be added. So that did impact some of these other structural elements. But all in all, the total there is $41,538. It's a summary of these smaller ones. So Kurt Kurt couldn't make it here today. I wanted him to be here to give you the details of this, but I had him put this in some of the language. If there are questions pertaining to this, I can have him here next month. But there were a few that had come in that he had rejected, but these are the ones that he has recommended for approval.
They added the roof drain that was in the plans, but they forgot to put it in when they were
No,
building.
the plans did not show it. So when the roofer was there in the location, there was a larger area that they were concerned needed to have roof drain in there with their calcs. So they added a roof drain in the piping to be able to get to that.
So it was missed by the design aspect.
Yep.
Do the designs ever chip in for these, since they made the mistake?
It's the same thing we've talked about before, is that if it's something that wasn't there, unless was a rework element, right?
I can see a rework, but this is a whole new.
Right.
It just baffles me when you pay them that money to design it, and little things like this.
Understand?
You probably would have had the same cost, but it's just the idea.
Yep. So, not that you need to take action on that, because I know we're under the 25,000 for them, but want to keep you in summary, and if you have questions, we can definitely have Kurt here next month to be able to give you an update on that. The rest of kind of an update just in scope of the project. So, we do have one contractor that has asked for an extension of time. B&B Electric has submitted a letter to Kurt and the team stating that they are unable to meet the end date that we are pushing for in October, and they are claiming that because of the delay or the time from the mason and their lack of manpower has caused them to have an extension or require an extension of time. Or, if not an extension of time, they're asking for authorization for their staff to be paid overtime to meet the end date. Our response to them is that we feel that we don't agree with the position. We feel that there is adequate time to be able to complete the project in the timeframe that we've determined because of historic data that we've had of other projects of similar nature in regards to what the state of the project right now to be able to get it accomplished, and that we have over 8 months to complete the project. They have been having 12 individuals on site over the course of the last few weeks, and we have told them at this point that we feel their claim is premature. We want to work with them to see how we can have some efficient coordination of their staff to be able to get to that point. But just so you guys know, there was a request there for either an extension of time or authorization for overtime, and we've denied that request. But I want to make you aware of that situation that's happening there. Other than that, the other contractors are doing fine, comfortable with the end date that's there, and being able to get those things accomplished. I don't know if you've been able to walk the site lately, but interiors are really coming together. A lot of paint that's going in, and second floor up on the courts is moving along, and
We do have a few coordination meetings that our team's going to be meeting with Tim and Jeremy to talk about some of the connection points that Tim has talked about here, and getting those contractors there, because it's going to be here before you know it. October will be here before we know it. So, safety, no lost time accidents on the project, so things are moving along good from the safety perspective. So, last few weeks, we've been averaging between 70 to 90 tradespeople on the site, so a lot of people crawling around in the building.
Is that number gonna go up as spring comes on, or?
Yeah, it'll climb a little bit. What happens is some of our rough-in starts to drop off when we get into finishes. I would say that we're probably gonna hit that 100 point. You know, you may tip over that a little bit. But yeah, there's probably anywhere between 100 to 200 tradespeople that come in and out of here, but they're not all here at the same time with the way some get in, and some get out. So.
Kurt, is there any, those 3 patches you have right between here and Quick Trip that you had to open up the main street?
Mm-hmm.
Is there, are they gonna be redone when everything is done?
In the spring, yeah.
So they're gonna take them out, yeah, because
Yeah, there's patching that needs to be done, and obviously they're gonna put that last final coat
lift
on.
over here, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I hit those every morning
You
with
hit 'em
my
with the
bus.
bus?
Boy, I tell you, they ride pretty rough.
Any other questions for Kurt?
Oh, one other thing, we are working on FF&E, that budget that had been identified. I was hopeful to have that to you today, but I'm targeting next month. We're going through all of the sheriff's needs from an FF&E perspective. I know we've got some IT budget line items that are in there, and then obviously the furniture, but that's another piece that we'll bring into you to allocate to what we have that funding for. So, other than that, things are going well. Loving the spring weather. How long that stays.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you guys wanted me to present to the board. I had talked to John last month, and he said take a month off. Are you guys meeting next Monday?
Yes.
If you want me to be there, let me know. Otherwise, if you want me to do it in February with like a plan, maybe we can do it in February with a plan update after we have Venture on board.
It is February.
I'm sorry, March. I'm sorry. Whatever you guys would like. I can give a brief update on Monday if you'd like me to, or I can do it the next month, so. No, yeah.
That makes sense to hold off until you find more information.
tomorrow, so I got it
Yep.
afternoon, put it on.
March.
March.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Kurt?
I'm
Hearing
sorry,
none.
I know you had somebody waiting. I was yapping too long.
Technology's fine.
Next on the agenda, Tim Robertson.
Okay, Carly, can you hear me?
Yes, hello everyone.
Hi, so Carly is from Spyglass, and because of the odd nature of how we govern phones here, Carly reached out to me. We've spoken years ago. They made a proposal. We didn't move forward with it. This technically doesn't fall under my bailiwick, since the business side of the phones is managed through the clerk's office, but you're the committee in charge of phones, so felt it was appropriate that she present her discussion to you, and then if you decide as a property committee that this is a good idea, you could send it forward, and then Paul would take it forward to exec finance, since it involves money. But I'm going to let Carly do a little presentation. She's going to take a little bit of time and explain what they offer. Carly, go ahead. Do you need to be introduced?
Awesome. No, I think that was great. Thanks, Tim. I did just share my screen. Are you folks able to see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So just a high-level overview of who Spyglass is and what we provide for our clients. So we're a unique telecom expense management firm, and we're here to do a one-time bill review, seeking both recovery and forward-looking cost savings opportunities in this space. So like to mention, it is over the phones. Our main scope is your voice services. So whatever your main phone system is, your internet and data, and then also whichever mobile expenses you're paying for. So in your case, you folks are using cell phones and hotspots. Those would be the main 5 areas that we would analyze for you folks. In a nutshell, we look for billing errors. So we can first go back into the inception of these current phone and internet contracts. recover where these providers have maybe overbilled you inappropriately in the past, and then also use our database and benchmarking tools to find ways to reduce your current monthly spend moving forward. These telecom providers are pretty notorious for overcharging their clients in a number of ways, and then also just not giving everyone the best possible rates out there. So that's what we're here to do in general. Definitely important to note who we're not and what we don't look to do during our projects. So we're not a telecom provider. We don't sell any phones, hardware, or service, and we also have no affiliation with any of these service providers out there. We're completely independent, here to do the one-time bill review and hopefully save you folks some money. Last big thing to note about us is we have been in business for 20 years doing this day in and day out. We're actually headquartered over in Cleveland, Ohio, but we do house the country's largest database of this middle market recurring tech spend. So a lot of folks to compare you to across the country. Over 13,000 clients nationwide and into Canada. And then just some more recent data, we've run over 1,800 new projects since 2021. And those projects alone generated over 70 million in cost savings opportunities. As far as some success rates to share with you, so across the board in 99% of our engagements, we are successful in identifying some sort of cost savings opportunity for our clients. We are 100% success-based, guaranteed by savings. So with that model, you would either fall into this 99%, have the opportunity to save the county some money, but in the off chance you're in that 1%, you would at least have the peace of mind knowing you're running efficiently, and there's absolutely no fee with us running the review in that case. 60% of the time, that's when we're successful in recouping cost. So finding dollars that have actually already been paid air to those providers, getting that back in the form of a refund, and then our average monthly reduction moving forward across all 13,000 plus clients is 20%. So think about whatever you're spending on your telecom and taking that down by about a fifth. Now, as far as the information Tim has shared with me where I think you would fall into these, so we're finding that any client's going to fall into that 99% as long as you're spending about $3,500 a month or more in your telecom with everything combined. Based off some services that Tim shared with me, I know you folks are spending at least $6,000 a month. So based off that spend level alone, that tells me that there's going to be some sort of billing error or better rate that we would be able to negotiate for you. Now, as far as our process, so what we would need from the county to get started and then how the analysis looks on our end, all we require from you folks are copies of the past 2 months invoices from each of your service providers. From there, we have two. First is a letter of agency. That simply allows us to obtain any other records we need directly from your phone provider. So we do source older bills that go back beyond 2 months and also your customer service records to decode all the tax tariff and fee applications, things like that to find cost savings. Second document's a one-page audit agreement. So that would summarize the process and presentation I'm giving today, allows us to simply perform the review for you. If we were to get those 3 materials from you folks, then we schedule a brief kickoff call. So that could either be, it'd be myself and either Tim or the clerk, whoever does take the project from that point forward. About 15 to 20 minute call, and the whole purpose there is to get the necessary folks introduced to your project manager. After gathering those 3 materials and having the kickoff call, we will completely disappear for about 4 weeks. You won't hear from us and you'll go about your day-to-day, and we'll build you 3 different reports. So first report's going to be focused on recovery. Again, going back in time and searching for refunds. Common mistakes here are any improper tax tariff or fee applications that were built onto the bills, improper discounts or promotions that could have been received in the past, and incomplete order entries. Second 2 reports are going to be focused on your forward-looking spend. So first one's an inventory report and usage analysis. I would say one of the big underlying benefits of our process, in addition to cost savings, is bringing you folks clarity as to where exactly every penny from this area of the budget is going. So this inventory report will be broken down by all of your buildings, every provider, circuit and service and account. But taking it back to cost savings, we'll be able to identify if there are any dormant services, maybe services associated with an old location, and then also any excessive services. And then the last and final report we'll build for you, once we figure out everything you folks are utilizing from that inventory report and usage analysis, that's when we compare you to all of our clients, and then also broken down specifically by industry and location for a benchmark analysis. That's a report you get to keep at the end, so it'll show you how your cost did compared to other counties in the state of Wisconsin, or just folks using the same providers as you. Once we do all that work, we return with a summary findings presentation. So laying out each and every cost savings opportunity we've uncovered for the county, lumped into those same 3 reports, again, recovery, service elimination, and cost reduction. This point forward, you are completely in the driver's seat. So actually picking and choosing which recommendations you feel work for the county, if any at all. There's no obligation tied to anything here. And then lastly, we would just take a few minutes to walk you through that benchmark analysis in more detail, show you how you can leverage it in the future if you ever do find yourself, renegotiating with these providers, and just how it's a helpful tool to have on hand. So for any potential fees, how we could possibly get paid, again, running it up front at no cost, assuming all the risk here in the engagement. You also are left with all 3 of those reports that I mentioned, even if you don't move forward with any of the opportunities. But if you do like what we find and you give us the green light to do the implementation, we will also do that implementation on your behalf with the provider. So you will never have to get on the phone and, worry about dealing with them. From there are 2 types of ways that we share implemented only savings. First one, only associated with recovery. So again, going back in time and looking for refunds, those opportunities are a simple 50-50 split. Any forward-looking recommendation that you folks would choose to move forward with, this is a 12 times multiplier to the amount that we save the county per month. So the 12 comes from 12 months in 1 year. In other words, you folks stay 100% budget neutral year 1, simply redirecting the dollars that would have already gone to that phone or internet provider and overcharges to Spyglass. And then in years 2, 3, 4 beyond, you're realizing 100% of those savings. So I know that second one's a bit wordy. Just to give you a general example, it's the one on the screen there. So say we identify that you're paying for a line $100 a month, you're not using that line, and you give Spyglass the okay to go ahead and disconnect that line and take it off your billing. We would do all that execution, and then the fee there for removing that line would be 12 times 100. In other words, the 1,200 that would have gone to that provider in year 1, and then you're pocketing that 1,200 in the years to come. So that's us in a nutshell, process, fees, all that good stuff. Anything else you would want me to cover in terms of information before opening up to questions?
That's it in a nutshell. So.
Any questions for Carly?
You got a handle on it?
I guess my question would be to Tim. My question is to Tim. You obviously feel that this is what you could...
No, this is outside my purview. From a technical perspective, this makes sense, but this is primarily a business-driven decision, and therefore, I felt like it would belong in front of decision makers. The part that interests me is the presentation that goes through and looks at all our different services and makes sure that we're doing best practices. Because we are now up to 3 different cell phone companies, two different internet providers, 3 different phone companies. We're about to add a 4th. So it's getting really, and it's distributed across the entire organization. Paul handles a big chunk of it, but each supervisor has control over their smartphones, and we're all over the place. So having this kind of analysis would benefit me as an IT person in trying to get a handle on, are we doing the best practices for making sure we're saving money?
So I got a question then. And this maybe goes to Carly. Carly, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe this question probably goes to you. So would your services recommend consolidation of providers in order to get savings, and you would handle the conversion of those, of going to new providers or different providers?
Yes, correct. So if that is something you want us to explore, we would discuss that in the kickoff call. Since we don't typically recommend switching providers, we just need to know on the front end that that's something you folks are interested in, consolidating from 2 internet providers to 1, but that's absolutely something we can explore and make a recommendation on.
And then I heard that you mentioned Paul would have a say-so in terms of how this could change things, or Paul, would you want to comment on that?
Not at this time.
Okay. You might have to think about what this all is, right?
Right.
Yeah, this gets brought to you first, because you're technically the committee that is responsible for phones. But Exec Finance and Paul are responsible for the business side of the phones. So they're going to need your approval to move forward so he can take to the next step if he's so inclined.
I got a question. You did.
I had one more question.
Okay, go.
So Carly, on that 12 times monthly savings that Spyglass wants to capture for the first year, is that negotiable?
No, our fee structure has been the same for the whole 20 years we've been in business. Now, that's why we set up so you can pick and choose which recommendations actually work for you. And then also, a lot of folks put the recovery dollars towards the forward-looking, so your ROI could be less than 12 months.
Thank you.
Carla, I got one question for you. I apologize because I had to step out for a little bit. But to have you guys come in and look at all these, it doesn't cost us nothing. You make your profit from the money that you find that we kind of waste, basically, or duplicate. We have where we don't need it. That's how you get paid, correct?
Correct. So we run the analysis upfront at no cost, and then also present those findings to you with no guarantee that we're going to make any money. From there, it's only a portion of the implemented savings.
I was a little unclear if this goes beyond the first 12 months in terms of the fee structure.
So it will never go beyond 12 months. The ROI is 12 months or less, because you could put the recovery towards the forward-looking, but it would never go beyond 12 months.
I see.
Good?
Good. It seems to me to be kind of a necessary move. Technology here is no longer the way it used to be. It gets more complicated and more diverse, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't come close to having the information I need to make an informed decision on a lot of this stuff, and this seems to be an answer to that shortcoming.
Well, I think, I had never heard the comments that were made in terms of the number of phone companies and internet companies and so forth, smartphone, whatever.
Yep.
I didn't realize we had these many companies we were dealing with, and certainly, if there's a way to reduce those, it would, in theory, be a savings, I would think.
Tim, does this include the sheriff's department's technology?
Yes, sir.
And all of those would be able to be included? And in other words, does he have to use certain providers because of some legalities or that sort of thing?
No.
Okay.
Are we going to get the same answer talking to other people?
No. Okay, so if there's no further questions for Carly, I'd like to let her go. So if you're okay with that.
I am.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Carly, thanks a lot for taking the time this morning. Sorry for the delay. The construction bit was really important, so we're glad you waited for us.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time. And if anyone has any further questions or wants to set up another call, Tim has all my contact information.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
I don't know. I'd like a motion to recommend that we go forward with this. That would go to Exec Finance?
I believe that would go to Exec Finance and Paul. And then I think I didn't dig into the weeds on the business particulars because that's just not what this committee is going to deal with. But if you make a recommendation, yeah, if they feel it's a business need, then they could go forward with them, and I'm sure she'd be willing to do another presentation for them.
That'd be my guess.
Well, let me ask Tim, they're not the only service out there providing this type of,
They're the only ones that have called me consistently through the years, or called Paul through the years. He's been pestered by him too. They're persistent, and they pitch a analysis for free, and I'm leaning towards I like free stuff, and if it turns out we don't take any recommendations, but I don't know, somebody's gonna need to dig a little deeper into the business side of it to figure out what we're agreeing to. We are approaching another problem in a similar manner. There's a gentleman that does this on the printing side, where he captures 30% of the savings that he finds. And we have to renegotiate our print contract in February of '24. And he has testified before the state about how printing companies rip you off. And the moment he enters our request for bids for the printing services contract, a lot of players jump out because they know they're gonna not make any money. So you'll be presented with other opportunities like this going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds the reason, like, we should get a copy of their contract and have legal counsel read it and make sure that this is all on the up and up.
And that's why I wanted decision makers to have a crack at it, so that if you decide to move forward, then we can bring Rick in and Paul can move forward. I don't want to waste anybody's time, so I'm starting with wasting your time.
Got it.
May I ask a question? As a committee, since there is no money involved directly to purchase this service, is there a need to take it to exec finance?
They're inside of they're in charge of the business side of the phone
and-
solution.
And that's the point I was gonna make. I don't have the information. Maybe this committee doesn't have the time to delve into the business side of it.
When you say business side of it,
The contracts, the details, the
Oh, I see.
basics of what's
Well-
going on, and that would be Rick and exec finance. From a strictly, well, the property end of it, we can recommend going forward. I don't know if
Well, I think-
my brain is scheduled to handle this kind of,
I think, yeah, you know, I'm just being argumentative maybe today. I certainly think it's very appropriate to have Corp Counsel review whatever contract, via either working with this committee or exec finance or any committee, you know, where there's a contract. That's very important. I guess I'll end it there. I'll go along with, you know, I'm not going to fight it. I guess I think that the committee has some authority.
and I agree, and when this gets to the full board, which I'm assuming it needs to do, it's always nicer to have 10 signatures on the resolution than 5. It kind of, and this is a situation where I wouldn't really be that worried about it passing the full board or not, due to what's been presented today. But I always feel better to have 10 people in favor of a resolution coming forward than less. The Exec Finance Committee may hit on issues that we don't think of that need to be answered, so I don't think we're hurting ourselves by having another committee.
Okay, so on the agenda, there isn't anything here that
Nope,
we were
this is just
going
part
to
of
make a decision
updates.
on. This is just an update, so we either need to have it on the agenda again for next month, or have it go to the exec well, either, we've already met.
And it's like you're psychic, because that's what I was going to mention, that we go live with Zoom on March 1st. We won't even have a bill from them until March. So time is on our side here. We'd be well-served to add it to the agenda next month, bring it back if you'd like. You can go ahead and make a motion to pass it on to exec finance, or you can make a motion to pass it on to corp counsel. But I think you need to include Paul in it, since he's been handling the business side for a bit now. I think we need to make sure his office is on board. This is the first time he's seen the presentation, so.
Well, we need to get it on the exec finance agenda for March, because we meet a week before this one. We met last week.
Right.
So we could meet in March, and then have it on this agenda the next week, and then it'll be for the full board the week after that in March.
If that works for you, yeah.
And also send it to Corp Counsel?
That'd be
Now?
March 6th.
We don't have any contracts to send to them.
To send to them, okay, I guess that's
And we
right.
can't request one until we've agreed to do it.
Right, this involves money in a way that is not revenue neutral. Because if we find the savings on our own, that's money we get to keep 100% of. If we don't find the savings on our own and we find it through them, then we are paying them money. So it's,
That's why I asked the question on the 12 times savings, because I've dealt with these kinds of companies before in the private sector, and I haven't seen one yet that doesn't give you some of the savings immediately. I mean, they're 50% of
Right.
past billings. I don't know how far back they can go, whether it's a year, 2 years, 5, I don't know. That's great. But once you give us 10% or 20% of the immediate savings right from the get-go, that would be a slam dunk. But we basically get nothing. If all the billing's good, we get nothing for a year, if they find anything. So, as an argument's sake, so I'm not saying we wouldn't want to do this, so.
yeah.
So we can have, this is going to be on exec finance. Does you feel it needs to be on our agenda again in March?
You will meet before the full board in March,
Yep.
correct?
Yeah.
So then may as well have it on here, since you are the committee
Yep.
responsible for a chunk of the phones.
Is there a way we can get Rick to look at a example contract before then? Is it, or can we not decide that?
Well, the way she talked, they're firm on their percentages, so there has to be a contract that he could take a
I don't see
look
why
at.
she
I'm
wouldn't
just saying,
send us
can
the
we ask
contract.
the vendor to give us a sample contract before
Yeah.
we
I
make
made a note.
any decisions?
I'll send that.
Okay.
I'll reach out to Carly and get what she proposes, and then we'll run that by Rick. That'll save some time.
Perfect.
There you go.
And we'll have it placed on the agenda for the March meeting of the property committee.
And this will be referred between now and then, it's going to go to exec finance for discussion.
Right.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Anything else, Tim?
Oh. So since we were talking about the building earlier, I'm going to lead with that. The FF&E budget for the new building for IT is $50,000. I think we will be fine with that, but I don't know where the connections between this building and the old building, or the new building, where that is built into the budget process. If that 50,000 has to include the connectivity of running the cables that is going to connect the two buildings prior to moving people over there, is that part of the new Justice Center budget, and that would fall under that 50,000, or is it part of the old building renovation? But one way or another, before September, I have to connect the two buildings somehow. And I don't know whose budget that falls under.
We should have asked Kurt that one, because I would have thought that was on the new.
So the only thing I've included in the new building budget as part of that F&E is cell phone boosters, which I took out of the budget originally when they came back from bid. They were like $148,000 for cell phone boosters, which made no sense since we had no idea what the phone profile was going to be like in the building. I toured the building last week. Many of the walls are up. Cell coverage we had 3 different phones in there, one for US Cellular, one for Verizon, and one for AT&T. And cell coverage outside the jail sections was pretty solid. Most people had connectivity throughout the building. There's a few spots, again, towards the jail and in that sheriff's hallway. But as I'm going to report soon, FirstNet the sheriff's department has migrated to FirstNet with their cell phones. And we're negotiating.
Completely? I thought they were still doing a test.
No.
Like 4 phones.
I'll get to that.
Okay.
I'm negotiating with the FirstNet rep to get 3 FirstNet boosters, which, based on our scan of the building, we would want in the 2 EOC locations. So the Emergency Operations Center, we feel a FirstNet booster there would be appropriate even if we have full connectivity, because you never know how many people are going to be in there. And then the sheriff's garage is the EOC staging area. So if we have any kind of emergency, So we'd like one there. And then I'm thinking the center of the sheriff's department in this one hallway would be one. But if we're going to provide cellular connectivity for individuals in the building, that second floor in the court suite, we probably need something that's more agnostic than the AT&T ones. So I'm guessing around 8 to 12,000 apiece, and I think we can get by with 2.
So this kind of ties back to the whole Spyglass thing. So if they just converted to FirstNet, would that be looked at by Spyglass and say, hey, this isn't a
Yeah.
good deal?
Yeah,
Potentially?
they could. That could be included. We can include whatever vendors we want, I suspect.
Okay.
I think they must have pretty good reception, and I took a tour of the jail, and half the workers were on their phones.
Well, there's this one section in the hallway between the cell blocks and the programming wing, or the laundry area and that area, it's nothing. And then in several of the jail sections, it's nothing. But they'll have Wi-Fi for the actual jailers and deputies. We'll have Wi-Fi up the wazoo, so they'll have connectivity. And I don't think the citizens really want for there to be a lot of cell phone connectivity in the jail. If you smuggle a phone in, you can't get a signal, who are you going to complain to? So I think we could probably get by with 2, at most 3. We'll be fine for that second floor area, and it might not require any. Once the walls are up entirely in that section, it might be just fine. Everybody might have cellular connectivity to their liking.
And that is if you get FirstNet to give you the 3.
Yeah, I'm going to need something for that ground floor, and I still have to work with Brett to make sure that he's okay with it just being FirstNet, because not everybody that comes to an emergency is going to be FirstNet. But the deputies and most people in the county who are part of the emergency response plans are going to be FirstNet, so.
Eventually, that's the plan.
Well, that appears to be the word that's going out, because we're getting a lot of feedback from those members.
Positive feedback?
Yeah, they want it, so.
Now, the boosters, you don't need to do any wiring or cabling.
I just need power and a conduit in the ceiling to be able to connect it.
So
and
that's
mount
all
it.
you need?
And those were built into the specifications of
Oh,
the
okay,
building.
so you're really, until you're ready to check it out officially, you won't need that.
We might never mount anything there. It'll just be a
Okay.
little round plate in the ceiling. The new building, everything looked good from our perspective, but we won't know until, I have no idea where all those conduits are going until the wires get pulled. You can't tell which is which. But it looks like we're going to have plenty of connectivity, so I'm not too concerned. On the old building, yeah, the connecting the 2 buildings is we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do that. And so I'll be bringing updates in the coming months when Kurt and Kurt sit down and plan out and plot out how that's going to work. Because we've purchased new switches for old and new building, and we've purchased a new network core. So we're already there with that piece of equipment. So
What's the cost then? What cost are you talking about?
the actual edge devices that are going to deliver the fiber that connects from the new data center back into the old data center and back into the first floor closet over here, so that the 2 sides are on the same network.
That's a hardware thing or an installation cost?
Both, because the fiber is going to have to be pulled by a professional, and then you're going to need the devices that connect it in. That might be as simple as just a connector that goes into the switches I purchased, because they should be able to handle that 25 gig connection. But we don't know until we get the engineers to tell us what needs to happen there.
We need to ask Kurt whether that was part of the original bid.
That should have been.
Because that should have been part of the bid.
Yes, I mean, because they knew they were going to have to hook up, so they should have been in
Especially
bid.
since it has to be done prior to this building,
Right,
being
and
original.
that's just the unknown question. So I guess what I'm saying is that 50,000 FF&E budget that IT has reserved, that you're going to hear about when he brings the FF&E back next month, at most, I'm looking about needing half of that, is what I'm hoping. Or maybe if the connectivity's good enough, and we don't care if citizens have cellular connectivity in the courtroom, maybe nothing, so.
So were you gonna reach out to Kurt on?
He's reaching out to me. We have to have meetings with B&B, and that's a big part of the plan, is we're going to be discussing this power shutdown that has to happen. And then I'm going to add that in, because I need to know now how this connectivity is going to go, so we have an idea of how we're going to make that happen and when.
Can you elaborate a little bit about this power shutdown?
They didn't make the meeting. B&B skipped the meeting, so I don't know specifics, but they have to do a transition between I think it's to bring that generator in.
When they swap the generator, we're gonna have the building down for a certain amount of time. But again, like Tim, I don't know when they plan on doing that yet.
And how long?
Yeah, it's when we have to try to schedule it at a time where it's not, I don't want to do it, and Tim wouldn't want to do it at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon.
Probably not.
So whether it's gonna be in the evening on a weekend or something like that, where we'll lose quite a bit here while they pull out the old generator, hook up the new generator, because and then they're dealing with electricity that I ain't touching, so.
So, yeah, we're in process, but I'm glad that you're being informed as to the various things that are put in front of you. The camera and badge systems for me are huge. Want to make sure that gets addressed as quickly as possible, so that we know we're coming in at, with a budget or what we're up against, because we want to make sure that gets done right. I don't want to be doing it in phases and screwing everything up. FirstNet. So we've migrated the Sheriff's Department deputy phones, and those individuals in the Sheriff's Department that'll be having phones going forward are now on FirstNet, and they also have a middleware that we installed called Intune. It's the same thing that is on each of your tablets, so that we can remote shut those down. We know what goes on the computer, so if somebody's adding freeware or something dangerous, we can get an alert. It's a requirement that we're recommending, and I wanted to bring up to you. So one of the ways that we're funding this new phone system is to eliminate 50 smartphones from the county rolls. It's $42 a month, so you can do the math. So it's saving the county a good chunk of money every month. Our cellular bill last year at this time was over $6,000 a month, not including the Verizon out at Highway. I've never seen that bill. But the reports I get, about a third of them weren't even being used. So in migrating them to FirstNet and putting Intune on, we in IT have established a precedent, and we'd like to get your approval to move forward with this. That if you're going to have a county-issued smartphone, you need to have the middleware installed on it, so that we can keep track of the phone and we can delete its contents or freeze its contents should it go missing. Just for security purposes and benefit of the organization, having that piece in place should be required, so that people who have the county-issued smartphone know we can tell what you're doing.
If it's a county-issued smartphone, why do we need to ask for permission?
No, I need permission from you to make that our official policy. We'd like to carry that forward. I don't think we need permission from anyone. You decide.
Why do you need our permission? You do
I
it on our
don't
tablets.
have that authority.
It's a policy
Smartphones.
change that he needs, department heads don't have the authority to change policy.
Well, I'm just, like with the tablets, do we have a policy that says it has to be on our tablets?
Yeah, but I'm only handing those out to board members, so I needed some way to protect it in case it went missing. So we installed that because it was just a minimum requirement. But county-issued smartphones predates my employment here, and they've always been left up to department heads. So department heads, whenever somebody says, I need a smartphone, they just go ahead and get one. It doesn't go to exec finance, it doesn't go to property, it doesn't go to anyone. They all just go ahead and add them. And then nobody's monitoring that as an organization. Nobody's paying attention to if it's getting used. Nobody's paying attention if they go missing. We have deputies that go off to the FBI for a couple months, and we leave their phone sitting here paying $42 a month on it when we could just go ahead and freeze it. So we don't have anyone in charge of smartphones. So I'm gradually trying to get this all in your purview. I think all smartphones should, what we're proposing is, if you're going to have a county-issued smartphone, it has Intune on it. If you need a new smartphone, you have to justify it. You have to put in a ticket to IT and explain as a department head or supervisor why this person needs a smartphone. And then every year, you should have to justify that to exec finance why you need these smartphones. Because we've been wasting thousands of dollars by not paying attention. And there's nobody to blame because the system was left up to individuals. And I don't want power over it, but I want you to have power over it. And I want the exec finance committee to say, yeah. So in the process of trying to get this system paid for the phones, we've had a fantastic response from the department heads. I think we've hit our goal of, we've already eliminated 15 this last year just by paying attention and asking questions. Human Services is going to eliminate a vast majority of their smartphones once the Zoom phones come online. Sheriff's Department's going to be getting rid of 5 to 10. Veterans is ditching theirs, we're ditching ours. Land Management's going to ditch 5. Health, I still don't know, but we've hit our mark. And the goal is to get it down so that if you need a smartphone to do your job, you're going to have one, but people are paying attention. Somebody's looking at, Paul's had somebody checking the monthly phone bill for how long?
Long time.
You guys pay attention to that. Nobody's paid attention to the smartphones, and nobody audits their usage, so we end up with a $6,000 a month bill. And that's just not tenable. So we're already knocked it down by about $2,500, and we're hoping to get it further. And I'm just looking for guidance from you to say, yes, we'd like to move forward with this, and then I would propose to exec finance the same, that they need to authorize new and existing smartphones going forward. And I don't want it to be an ordeal where they have to, sit there and go, well, they made 7 calls last month. No, just have it be simple, or whatever they want. But I propose that we take control of this.
I think you should ask it to be put on their agenda for action and do it. I think that's a great idea. I mean, at the same time, we need to go back and talk about what we talked about 6 months ago about BYOD. I mean, there's more money to be had with BYOD. But there, and again, that's a policy issue that we would need to get update policies on. If you have BYOD and you're getting a stipend, then you need to have Intune on your phone, your personal phone, all that kind of stuff. That's common in the private sector. So there's more things that we should be considering in those lines. So I think this is a good first step.
In case BYOD is bring your own device, in case he was going in a place you didn't know. But and the thing, so far we've gotten all this compliance and we've hit our mark without implementing BYOD policies or a stipend, but it has come up. There are several individuals like, can we get a stipend for using our personal device? But a lot of the staffers are like, I don't like carrying 2 phones, and they're just willing to dump it just so they can move on. But the supervisor's department has been fantastic through this process, and I think we just nudge them a little further and we're going to get even better results. The other issue with BYOD is the HIPAA and CJIS requirements. It gets difficult once we go down that road. Cradle points. The Sheriff's Department purchased cradle points and antennas to go in, and that's going to add connectivity. It'll marry to their FirstNet. We've hit a snag with the antennas, but so we were prepared to roll those out early February last week, and then that got nixed because the model of antenna, there was a miscommunication. The vendor that's providing them had all the specs on the different squads, and we had an antenna picked out that was going to work, but he couldn't get them for 3 months. So in order to meet our deadline, he found a replacement and brought them in. Well, they're too big and they don't work. So now Brett is having to do a tussle there. But we have personnel in place. Renee's handling that, and so once we get those antennas squared away, we'll get those installed, and we should have some happy deputies for that. The phone status for the Zoom, Kathy Harms has spent a number of grueling hours trying to put together the phone trees for the new phone system. So when you call in, you will no longer hear Paul's voice announcing what extensions to call. Many Spanish speakers in the county are going to be very disappointed to not hear the Spanish with a Norwegian accent. So that'll be a sad day. But she's worked it all out and we've met with all the department heads and come up with a solution for after hours and holidays, and the phone tree behaves the way they want. Some are more customer-centric, where they want to make sure that there's never an opportunity not to talk to a human. Others want it to be directed to specific individuals. So Kathy put in a lot of time to work with them to come up with the best possible solution. We think it's going to work out pretty good. We're going to have 2 training sessions, one this week and one next week. They are going to be recorded, so all employees will have an opportunity to watch it either live or participate later. We'll have admin training on the 22nd, where we'll learn how to manage the system on the back end. The numbers are already being ported over. We are not migrating over the fax machines and 2 lines in the courts and 2 lines or 3 lines in dispatch, because they need to stay analog until migration to the new building happens. We've begun having meetings with the builders regarding that migration of dispatch, because we've got multiple players involved. We have to work with, well, Lumen provided our Vesta system, which is built by Motorola, so that, how we're going to move that is a nightmare, because we have to convert that from analog to digital. We've got you've been involved in dispatch moves before.
Yes.
It's a circus. So we're starting planning now. I don't know if we're going to have enough time, but we're working on it. I think that's all I had. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. In the new jail, for all the IT and stuff, is that going to be fiber or is that all copper?
It's Cat 6 to all the locations. The jail command equipment that's in the sub-basement below the control center will be connected back to the data center with fiber and back to the wiring closet that serves the jail in the west end of the sheriff's office with fiber. We've got 17 access points, wireless access points going in the jail, because there is so much concrete and metal in there. But most of the drops are going to be Cat 6 copper.
Anything else for Tim? Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Jeremy?
Okay, so I'll start off since our last meeting, I'm pretty sure most of you are aware, but we did have a death in my particular department. One of my maintenance men passed away on the 25th of last month. It was unfortunate, but we've been able to try to, do our best to keep up with what's going on. The position has been posted, and it's posted, I believe, until this Sunday. This morning I followed up. We have had six applicants so far, but as it stands, I'm hoping by the meeting for this committee by next month, we'll either have made a selection or somebody is already in place at that point. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. Also, along with staffing, probably either in March or April, just so you guys are aware too, I'm going to end up going to personnel bargaining, because I'm going to need a start for moving forward to get a second custodial position for my department for when this new building is in place. So it'll, personnel bargaining, exec finance, full board to get approval for that, but I'm hoping to have someone in place at least a month prior to the new building opening, so that person has time to train with what their expectations are going to be. So just an FYI that I'll be moving forward with that. When it comes to regular maintenance stuff, I've been gone for a week and a half, something like that, so I don't know of anything major that's happened or changed in that point in time. But prior to that, I did get the contract going for what we had mentioned before for all the paper dispensers for the new building. Those have all started arriving. I got that at no cost by signing a contract for 12 months to buy the paper, which I'm already purchasing anyway. And that was a 12-month contract that started in January. So the prices are locked in at what I've been paying for the past few months. I'm only locked into purchasing that until the end of this year. And again, it's the toilet paper, paper towels, stuff that I've already been purchasing since I've been here. So there's no concern on any of that. But it was able to get me all the soap, paper towel, toilet paper dispensers matching for the new building and this building all at one shot. And they've already started arriving. I've got, I don't know, 90 boxes of stuff staged, strategically around this building for when they're needed. The only other one that I'm working on right now is for chemicals and dispensers, so that I can get dispensers for the new building, for the laundry facility, for the regular cleaning chemicals and stuff like that. So I'm working on to try to get new dispensers to match in both facilities, and lock in a price on the chemicals for that. Hopefully I'll have an idea on where we sit for that by the next meeting. No other major concerns, no breakdowns, no leaks, no catastrophic events in the past month. So if you have any questions for me other than that, it was short and simple this month. So,
Any preventive maintenance challenges that are going to be in the next 6 months or so, or?
PM wise, no, not so much. I walk through that building about every 2 weeks too, to see what my new PM schedules are going to look like and what type of filters I'm going to need, et cetera. But I don't anticipate any issues with any equipment in this building, but we try to PM things as much as we can. But again, what I anticipate and what's actuality may change in the next 6 months. But right now I foresee no major issues, concerns, or costs coming up. So.
Any other questions for Jeremy? Thanks, Jeremy.
Yep.
Next is discussion/action regarding televising and recording of all meetings. And Kevin's here to address this and listen to what we've got to say. Now, at some point in the recent past, Drew reminded us one day that in the last term, there were hours of operation set forward that after the last county board election, we promptly forgot about those hours. You want to remind us what those hours were set at, Kevin?
Yeah, it was 9 to 3:30, I believe, and right now, we've been asked to move it up a little bit to 8:30. We've done that. Obviously, this meeting was at 8:30. So that's kind of how we've operated since, I think it was February of 2022, so.
Kevin, is the 3:30, is that the ending point? Or
Yes.
Starting, ending point, okay.
And that was put in place with those hours because of COVID, is that right?
Right, and there was, because of COVID, radical change in the number of meetings televised. We were doing things remotely that we never expected the need previously. And I guess what the county as a whole is going to have to determine is, personally, I've heard a lot of comments from the public about televised meetings. And why hasn't this one been televised? Or why didn't you televise that one? Or I watched this one. I'm glad that service is available to the public. And we're going to have to make a decision on, because I think it's gone beyond just responding to COVID by using the technology we have available. And that the public has seen that as a service they enjoy and utilize, whether it's mandatory or not, due to some health concerns. So the discussion is, I think, do we want to expand on those hours? And if so, are we ready to deal with the increased cost and the things that go along with expanding hours? For discussion.
And, before COVID, apparently before I got here, they were only doing just the county board meeting once a month. And then during COVID, they started covering almost every single committee. And then kind of once things slowed down, they kind of slowed down with as much meeting coverage, but we still do most of the committees, just not every single one.
My assumption, Kevin, is that if we're going to continue broadcasting every meeting, it's going to take manpower that we currently don't have.
Yeah, and then, I mean, you run into the one issue with, the public has to be able to physically be here too. So, I mean, I come from a city background where we had all our meetings at night, and so it was just basically the only thing we had to do with that was just leave the doors open a little bit later. We never really had these morning meetings like we have here, so it's a little different for me. But it's definitely something that IT would need to be involved with more, kind of on standby after or before hours, and then we would need security to be on board with it and everything. So it's really easy when the city hall, they don't really have security, but here we do. So that's something we have to kind of go through and look at.
Well, this affects both IT and the television.
Yeah, we work with them quite a bit if there's any issues with getting the meeting up or the Zoom call. And obviously with security too, it's getting people in here. So yeah, it affects like 3 departments kind of. So it's definitely not a real simple thing, especially if you're going to go outside of hours. It's a little bit more complicated. So.
Mr. Chair, the 2 committee meetings that we're missing right now are just Human Services and Health, correct? So if we didn't do anything, just left it alone, we would cover everything but those 2. So basically, the question is, do we want to?
Highway, you don't have highway.
And currently the ad hoc
And we
committee.
can't do highway, that's you.
Yeah, highway's at the highway department, so.
But you can't go out there remotely and set that up?
No, not from here, no.
The ad hoc committee that's going on right now would, we haven't.
Yeah, and why couldn't highway meet here?
There's no reason that we
There's no
couldn't.
reason why we can't, I agree with you.
They used to.
Highway
For a
did.
while, then they come here.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
think-
we've got this room and,
Might as well use it.
so that would solve that problem.
Right.
Yep.
Kevin, question, are all on the meetings that are being televised, are they live or are they recorded and then posted after the fact?
So you're talking about the meetings that we don't, like our department doesn't record?
Well, like, for example, this one here, is this live to the
Yes.
public?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Are all of them that are on television live?
Yes.
Okay.
And then you show them again later.
Yes, yeah, we also have replays. We post them on our YouTube channel,
You
Facebook.
too, and then
all that.
again, you can, all
Yep.
of them, correct?
Yes, yep.
Is your department still doing as many recordings or broadcasts of meetings and events in the public?
We haven't really done the sports much this year since the schools basically do their own live streaming of their own sports. So we haven't really gotten as deep into that. But I plan on this summer being more involved, especially with the southern part of our county. We don't get down there quite as much. So I want to get some coverage down there. We cover this area pretty good, I would say, in Independence. But it would be good to cover some of the southern cities in our county.
Some of the, I know I've seen some of the Trempealeau County Historical Society has programming and some polka bands.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, has that coverage fallen off due to the increased programming with county meetings? Since you are limited to your personnel, you've got, including you, you've got 3 people with regular employment?
Yep.
And then volunteers?
Yep, Rick's part-time now. So we're down to 2 full and then 1 part-time. So, yeah, I mean, I mean, I think we generally cover most of the meetings, the way they kind of fall right now. And, yeah, if more, like the highway department wanted to come here, that would be great. They're kind of doing their own thing right now, so.
They do meet early, too.
Yeah.
We have a Human Service Department meeting this afternoon at 4, and quite frankly, that's been tradition to meet at 4, and I don't know why, so I will ask.
Well, it's because of the public, the people that are from the public.
Well, I understand that, but I don't think I'm not sure the 3 are locked into a work schedule that conflicts. I will check it out.
I was thinking the same thing.
I will check it out, because
Where health, it's a different situation. We've got doctors.
you've got some professionals that do have work hours there, yes.
So, Kevin, just to remind the committee here, I think prior to recordings and televising live, your department was pretty much 100% go out into the public and find places that people wanted to have live or shows going on, and as well as the recording studio here. That was your department's role. It had nothing to do with meetings. Committee meetings
I mean, other than the county board meeting, pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So this has all been added since COVID, and that brought to light some nice things to have for the public in terms of live streaming. I remember we talked about this in a meeting or two before about there is other technology that we could employ via Zoom, which would, or other options that would cost maybe a little bit more money, but it probably would be cheaper than adding personnel and staff, and would allow Kevin and his team to do more of what they did prior to COVID. So I think that's something we should discuss. It would require the committees to make sure that they had the right links out there and it's published to our website or whatever, so that people wanted to join that meeting via Zoom, they could click in and go look. But that is something that we could employ as well.
Now I see Drew has joined us, and my assumption is he has something he'd like to say.
Thank you,
Take it
Mr. Chair.
away.
I don't have a lot. I just wanted to build on a couple of things that were mentioned before regarding the highway department. When COVID started, they did come in here and meet for a time when everybody was concerned about masks and transmission of COVID. They broadcast, and once that started to loosen up, they went back out there. So if they want to come back in here, we can easily do highway. But we do not have the capability right now to do them live on site. We can't do that. As far as human services goes, our previous director, Mr. Derek Westby, actually asked Ms. Sukla if she'd like to move them up to 3 o'clock, 3:30, and she declined to do so. So that's why we haven't been covering that meeting, because those meetings tend to go long past the end of the day, and you probably don't want to be paying overtime and such. So we did make that offer to them, but she declined to change the time of the meeting. So that's all I had. So
Okay.
just pointing that out there.
Thank you, Drew. Just a question out of curiosity. Did Rick go to part-time because he wasn't needed more than part-time, or was it a personal thing?
Well, his role is more like scheduling and editing and stuff like that. It's not as much field work. So we felt that we didn't need him, all week necessarily. So, and he kind of felt the need that, I don't know if you watched those meetings that we had when we had that kind of transition from full-time to part-time, but yeah, it kind of felt like he could kind of do his job in 3 days versus 5 days, especially in the winter when there's not as much going on, so.
Okay. Thanks for that. What's the committee's feeling about maintaining the service we provide now through the TV station, reducing the coverage, expanding the coverage? Because however we respond to the need is gonna determine what we have to do. You know, with, I happen to think it's a great service to provide to the public is the ability to participate with these meetings live if we can afford it.
Well, I think it is potentially possible to take care of two of those committees, the Highway Committee and possibly, and I will have to ask Ms. Sukla what the issue has been in the past, and if it's something that we can deal with, we will deal with that, and maybe have it a little earlier. The Health Department is going to be I guess what I'm saying, trying to suggest is if we get down to one committee, that there's a conflict, then maybe we can resolve that by doing a little bit of, budging on the employment times for people to provide that technical coverage, and maybe we can minimize the kind of changes we have to make with the staffing and their hours.
So basically saying, get Highway to come in here.
Yeah.
And Health. Join us
As
a
much
little
as we
earlier,
can.
sometime during the day.
Yeah, I guess what I would
I mean,
suggest.
Human Services, and then Health, we would ask them to come in one day a month for 2 hours, from 6 to 8.
I guess I would suggest maybe by next month we'll know what we need to do, if anything.
The ad hoc committee has also been, the first meeting was at 6 PM. Because, I mean, trying to find a place for 7 people that was during the day, it was like impossible. It was even hard enough just to find a day in the evening. So, I mean,
Well-
if the question is gonna be, we're gonna make a resolution that says every committee meeting period needs to be televised, I think that's gonna be a real challenge.
That's going to be a real tough one, yeah.
So,
I guess we need to start with the standing committees and see what we can do for those. And if we run into a snag there, then we may as well include the other committees too and figure out a policy. But I guess I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that we would see what we can do with these two committees, first of all, or the three, and then put it back on the calendar for discussion next month.
You know, I've always had this kind of attitude that lately doesn't seem to be a real popular attitude. It's that county board has the authority to inform department heads as to when they will meet and where they will meet. So on maybe a less kinder, gentler approach, I think the county board has the authority to say, this department will have their meetings at this time in this location, so that we can record them or televise them. I'm used to having, as I was employed here, having a boss telling me what to do and when to do it, and it's not always a popularity contest with doing a survey to determine when, if it's okay with everybody, we'll meet here and at this time. So I don't view that as maybe as large of an obstacle as it has been to this point.
Well, and I would lean towards you, that's why I'm saying I would like to have justification why that particular committee has to meet at 4 o'clock. And it would have to be obviously outstanding rationale before I would, because being chair of that committee, it appears to me like we can change it. And I know the Highway Committee, if they've already met here in the past, that is possible.
Yep.
So.
I think Trumbull County is so unique that we have this.
Right.
That our, you know, we can show these, and the people in the county really appreciate it, because a lot of people watch these.
Yeah.
And I think we owe it to the people that elected us to let them see everything that we're doing as much as we can, so they stay up to speed and they know what's going on, And this is such a unique thing to have in such a small county.
Right.
I don't disagree with you at all. I just want to make sure, again, it doesn't have to be via the medium that we're currently using. If we wanted to expand on that ability, we certainly could.
I'm gonna have to sneak out.
Okay. I'd like to have this placed on the agenda for the next month's meeting, and I can ask Tim to talk to us about other avenues of technology that we could utilize.
That'd be good.
In this regard.
Yep, that would be good.
Okay. And in the meantime, I'll ask committee members to spend some time thinking about how far we're willing to go to televise our meetings. And I'm hearing throughout the state that we're one of the few counties that actually does this.
Yeah, we're technically the only county that does this. I worked for the city of Wisconsin Rapids before this, and we were kind of contracted through the county to go and record their county board meeting once a month, and that was the only meeting we really covered. It wasn't live. It was just like a one camera shot. It was pretty basic. They also had their own Zoom during COVID, but that was just like a very static shot, and it was you could only see with theirs, you could only see the chair and the clerk, and that was it. So it was a lot. They didn't have quite the fancy stuff that we did. They literally just had their IT department, and then they would pay us to come record their once monthly meeting. Their committee meetings weren't recorded at all, so.
Well, if we can afford it, I think it's mandatory that we take advantage of the technology that's available to us in providing this service to the public. So we'll get it on the agenda for next month, and hopefully have more information by then.
I guess for you, Kevin, you could come up with the ability to do the health committee, or that's?
Are you talking about if they met here or there, or?
On a monthly basis?
Yeah, I mean.
Just move your staff around accordingly or something to that effect, or?
So they usually meet, you said, 8 o'clock or? 6 o'clock PM, okay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these departments, typically like them that are really specialized, kind of prefer to have their meetings at their facility. So it would be interesting to see if we could get them to come back here first.
I don't know why they couldn't come down.
Or the Board of Health.
They meet Board of Health. They started.
Oh, they do? Okay. I mean, typically the only night meetings we did before were just the county board. And they just meet once a month too,
Just once a month, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could kind of try to get that one as well. But yeah, you'd have to obviously work it out with I guess the security would already be here technically.
Yeah, they have to have the doors open anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, Kevin, you got two options there. You got one where you could flex your time if you wanted to, or being that you're only two guys and a part-time guy, you do have some funding there to pay the overtime if you guys. How do you do it on a county board night when you got to be?
Yeah, so usually I cover that. I'm salaried, I'm not hourly.
Oh, you are.
So I don't know if you guys knew that, but.
Well, so it's no problem
So,
there if you're
so yeah.
We can work you as much as we
Yeah, technically, yeah.
That's it, you're on.
Yeah, I typically like to be here, during work hours and everything, and I can kind of move my own schedule around. I'm kind of used to the night meetings typically from where I used to work, so it's a little different coming here, and all these meetings are, 8:30, 9, so it's a little bit early, but yeah, I'm not like super against covering another, meeting per month. I could definitely make that work, or just come in a little bit later that day or something like that, so.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Kevin before we move on? Hearing none. Thanks, Kevin. Discussion/action on meeting room policy and security. I think we are looking at some of the same issues we just got done talking about. The scheduling for security in regards to meetings after hours, you know, I think historically, we found out that it'd be difficult, if not impossible, to provide adequate security every time it's necessary. That would be wonderful. But I think because of the varied schedule and the fact that you need people to do that, we have basically the same kind of questions. How far do we want to go? What can we afford? What is the public need for its protection in this regard? So, you know, you can look at black and white, what is mandatory for adequate security, and then that rarely lines up to reality. You know, already in this construction project, we've had various security issues that have been allegedly set in stone that are gone already, and the new building's not open yet. So I think we can at least make plans on how to proceed, but we're not going to know for sure on what's needed and how our meeting room policy is going to look like until it's open and being used. Because of my background, I think if this building's open to the public, you need to have somebody there for security purposes. Screening has to happen every time somebody comes in. I know there are people that don't agree with that, but we can agree to disagree. I also think that all employees need to be screened when they come to work as well, and I know that's not a popular attitude.
Come on.
Well,
It's so simple for us to come in.
Yeah, and that's just it, you know, I should be getting screened every time I walk through the door. So should everybody in this room, but we're not. And I think if we do an appropriate education program prior to, that would be mandatory in order to decrease the amount of kickback you're going to get if you implement that kind of a policy. In the past, we set up the magnetometer one day and had everybody run through it. Well, there were quite a few employees that said, no, I'm not doing it. Don't you trust me?
So is the question whether we should allow the meeting rooms to be accessible for the public, or the times of the day we would allow those meeting rooms to be accessible?
Does an open meeting law make it accessible for the public?
Mr. Chair, I'm on Extension, and that was the first place that I was aware that was brought up, that they were wondering, you know, 4-H used to come in here before we had security, and I'm just using that as an example,
Yeah.
and have whatever gathering they had. But I think it's what we're talking about now with the security issues and everything else. I better be careful how I say this, but 4-H must meet somewhere. And as a group, you would think that they could use those facilities. I think, for my end of it, explain to them it's just too costly and too difficult to do anymore with changing our society the way things are, so that would be my opinion, I guess.
One analogy would be, or another way of thinking of it is, what if they went to the public library and asked to use their rooms? What would they say? Their hours are from 11 a.m. till 6 p.m. here in Whitehall, and we don't have the ability to open our facilities to the public, even though it's a public facility, after our hours. I'm not saying that's what I want, I'm just saying, that's probably what the library, I'm sure that's what the library would say. So do we have any liability for allowing a group to come in after hours, even if we had security? I think we do.
That would be a question for someone with a legal degree in my mind.
Agreed.
But I understand what you're saying, but I also understand that if things go as planned, we're gonna have a significant amount of square footage that's not gonna be used most of the time.
We're gonna have a lot more meeting rooms from what I see on the plan.
Yeah, that's
A lot
true.
more
Yes.
meeting rooms to keep track of.
So, is that a service that we can afford and we are inclined to provide? And if so, these are the questions that need to be answered.
I guess I'd like to see a number. I think a number could be put out there if we said we offered 100 meetings a year. I don't know if that's, makes sense, or is that, no?
You probably don't have to
No.
make that many, but a lot
I
of-
mean, if that's gonna cost us $100,000, I'm not in favor, but if
Yeah.
The
we could do
administration,
that for
something like that.
$10,000, I would say yes.
But, you know, you bring, your example, I think, is an excellent example. You know, 4-H meetings, here's a positive personality builder that knee-jerk reaction on my part is we would want to provide a space for 4-H to meet. Because the long-range benefits far outweigh the fact that we need to provide security for when that meeting occurs. But that's just my opinion, and that's a discussion I personally don't think we're gonna come to any conclusion on today. Paul?
One of the things too is that, like the ag agent, you know, Steve, he meets with farmers at night. And they schedule a room, but then it'd be like this ad hoc committee that just now, we didn't have security for them to come in because they started at 6. But they kind of manned themselves. We made them go into the Wisconsin room so they could see and allow, you know, because the doors lock at 4:30, right?
Correct. Unless
So-
it's otherwise noted for us for whatever else, but other
Right,
than that, it
right.
was, they locked 4:30, those front doors. So, I mean, yeah, and there's certain meetings that we do make exceptions for. The fair board,
The fair
we
board
don't
comes
put,
in?
we don't put a deputy at the front door because there's a deputy on the fair board.
But
And a county board
And
member.
yeah.
there was security for that meeting.
I think Travis, we
Yeah.
scheduled it out, that
Was it?
Travis, yeah, Travis was there,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I set that up before I went on vacation.
Okay.
Because it popped up on the sheet and then, but then it was a matter of, I don't know if it was Travis, I think it was Wheeler that was actually there, but then it was a scramble for the sheriff's department to try to find somebody to man the door. Another thing too for meetings, whether I'm on the mic, there's a good 5 months out of the year, 4-H, Boy Scouts, stuff like that. You should be able to offer up some of like the cloths, shelters, stuff like that, that's out at Peacher Park. That's a county, I mean, they do rent those out for things, but if you're doing a nonprofit type stuff, they have a maintenance guy at the park, or a custodian that opens up that building and locks that building and stuff. It would just be, you charge for if they're doing a birthday party, but if you got the 4-H or the Boy Scouts, that's another option that you can throw out. Mind you, I'm volunteering a different department's space. but-
That's seasonal, though, right?
See, yeah, you don't wanna have the Boy Scouts, I mean, the Boy Scouts were there last week,
I was gonna say.
but
they
they're
were
doing their
winter
winter stuff, that they're outside, they're not in one of the buildings, but that's another space, because now you're looking at, okay, you can have the 4-H here, but so they're, or just for an example, but they're a nonprofit. But if you wanna have somebody wants to rent that room, well, could you charge them for a particular, maybe not the full hourly rate of the deputy that's gotta be at the front door, but to help offset that cost of $20 an hour, or $50 for a meeting, or whatever it is, to help offset some of that cost, so. Just another thought, but.
And our only charge there is $20 for anything that's not county related. So we do charge for usually.
Yeah, and we might want to revisit
We
that
could-
price too.
That would be in your bailiwick.
Huh. Well,
It's been 20 since I
for a
started
long
here.
time.
Now we know it's a long time.
Yeah.
Does the school, high school, allow extracurricular activities that are not school functions?
Yeah.
GET does.
Yeah, I think this one does too. There is, craft fairs up there.
They've hosted us for that Martin Luther King Day once too, so.
And they don't have security?
No.
No. There's a question.
Yeah, I
do
guess
we-
back to the school issue, yeah, that's
Do
interesting.
we want to discuss that?
What's that?
Security absolutely mandatory. I mean, just because I think it is, doesn't mean it is. I mean, it's an option. I don't really care for that as an option, but such is life. We allow people to use county facilities, as you were talking about, out at Petrick Park, and we don't have security there. Because it's outdoors, how does that change it from having a meeting indoors?
All offices are locked in the building, so they can't get into,
Correct.
I guess that's a good point.
Somebody still has to, lock the front door when they leave.
Yeah, I can do that automatically, but I have to set a timer. I don't know, like if your meeting runs from 4 to 5, I can have the doors open from 3:45 to 4:45. But if they leave at 4:15, then the doors are still unlocked for X amount of time. So that's why a lot of the times for these after-hour meetings, the county board, I'll have the door set to unlock at, let's say, 6:30, and then that's when there's a deputy there. But then they relock at 7:30. Meeting's already started, but there's still a deputy there. But if you weren't here at the beginning, or the human services, that's tonight, I don't unlock the doors for that at all. That starts at 4 o'clock. If you wanted to be here, then you're
You would be here
here.
at the meeting.
Is
starting.
that, is that legal?
And you can always get
Open
out
meeting law
if the
requires
door is
it.
locked.
Open meeting law requires your doors should be
And
open.
there's a
before
deputy there at
meetings.
the front door to let them in too, but then he doesn't, if he has to go to the bathroom, anything like that, he still lets people in, but it's not a closed meeting, but the door is not unlocked 100% of the time either. So. And then there's, again, with the security aspect, the after hours, you put a deputy at the front door, even though you guys are using the Wisconsin room, okay, all the offices are locked, but dispatch is still right there. It's locked, but it's still right there, and that's another issue, that if you got general public still just wandering the halls, if you're just in the Wisconsin room, they can get out of the 2 double doors like towards the sheriff's department or the single door that would lead to land management. But once those doors close, they can't get back in, so now they're locked in, they can get out the quick trip, but it's just the way that the doors are set up. If it's in the Wisconsin room, they have access to that whole first floor, maybe not the offices, but the hallway that's there.
If somebody was to go through towards the sheriff's department and that fire door closed behind them, they still get out to the horseshoe?
They can get out to the construction site. They also have access to the basement at that point. Because technically, when we had jail visitation after hours, they would come in from the horseshoe, go to the second floor to visit the jail, but the only public restrooms at that point were in the basement. So we had to leave those accessible as well. And then we used to have people that would get released from jail on the weekend and then would sleep in the basement because they had nowhere to go. So that's happened once or twice too.
Yeah. Well, let's put this on the agenda for next month as well. There are way too many questions to answer for today.
We could talk about this for a long time.
Well, we can talk about it forever. Because, well, I think for one thing, we need to come to a consensus on whether we're going to make meeting rooms available to public entities. And if so, which ones are we going to allow and which ones aren't we going to allow? And maybe that decision needs to be made by more than just this committee. Discussion needs to include maybe more than just this committee.
Is it the county's responsibility to provide a space for them to meet, or the city's and the school's responsibility? You know, I mean, is it fair to people in Galesville, they can't come, they won't come up here and use the rooms, but, you know what I mean? So should we keep it more local, or just open it up? That's a tough decision.
Yep. Any other comments on this topic before we,
Did you guys ever decide if you're gonna just have one entrance for sure for the new jail? This, we should get this down packed before the day
Yes.
comes.
It's been indoctrinated into us. that
Yes,
there's only
because
one entrance.
we
one
should.
entrance?
Many exits, but only one entrance.
Yeah.
What the county
Without a
board
rock.
needs to decide is that if employees are going through the front door or not. That's what needs to be decided.
If the employees are what?
Going through the front door screening.
And, oh, yeah,
That's
screening.
what needs to
And
be
then at what
decided.
time do you put a deputy there?
And you only go out that door. Because if you let them go out 3 doors, you might as well just let them come in 3 doors, because.
They will.
I know, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We have to make a
It
policy.
was
If the
designed
badge
that they
doesn't
will
work-
go out the quick, like the door that's by Quick Trip, they can go out it, but they cannot come back in. Like, there's no badge reader, it's not gonna be there. They'd have to walk around and come back through security.
And all the other doors are alarmed.
Play devil's advocate here.
Right.
Or
If you're doing it for security,
put a rock
one
in the
person
door
walks
so you can
out
get back
and
in.
holds the door and lets everybody in. You're
Part of the
defeating,
policy
I know,
would be
It's on
that.
camera.
you know, I know, but I'm just saying, you defeat the purpose of the security, even allow them to go out. I mean, I think that's great going out there, you know.
Well, there's lots of arguments on that too, so.
But as it sits down, come in the main entrance, that will be, can go out the quick trip door, which will be in the line of sight of the deputies that are at the front door.
Yeah, it's
All
right
other
behind
doors
you.
are alarmed, so if someone opens the door to leave, that will respond to the deputies at the front door, and they can look at those doors on the camera. So, yeah, there's still, but again, like Ashley brought up too, is the question I think still is every employee getting screened? And then at what time do you put a deputy at that door? Because my staff arrives at 5, 6, and 7 in the morning. IT, you know, comes in random times as well. Social workers are here day, night, and the weekend. And staff starts showing up anywhere, you know, and the dispatchers show up at 11 at night, at 6 in the morning. Jailers are here at 5 in the afternoon, you know, so then now it's, you put a deputy there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the off chance. A social worker has to come in at 1 o'clock in the morning or on Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. That's, because then it beats the point, because then I can come in on Saturday afternoon, put anything I'm not supposed to bring into this building in a ceiling tile or in a bathroom stall, and then get it on Monday after I've been screened. You know, again, playing devil's advocate and making more issues for you,
But, you know,
that's the question on the table.
Yeah.
So.
And if you look at the country statistically, employees are involved in a high percentage of courthouse events. Enough so that there shouldn't be a question about whether employees get screened or not. However, that's a point of, a big bone of contention. Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is there any way we could find out what other counties do? I mean, do other counties screen people at the door? Do they screen their employees? Do they just screen in John, you know, Q Public when he comes in? Is that the only ones who have to go through that? Or, and just see what other counties are doing, because I think, I know, if you're gonna screen everybody, like he says, they're coming in here at 6, I see them come in here at 7:15, 7:30.
I bet you Paul knows his counterparts in Jackson and Buffalo. He could pick up the phone and get an answer in about.
Well,
Just find out.
It varies from county to
It does.
county.
We've done studies, we've done research on this one. I just know this because I was part of the security committee that presented to the board years ago asking for the front door security in the first place. And we did a presentation on the statistics and stuff, and that was, I don't remember the year offhand. So I don't know recent numbers, but it was split in half then, so.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, some only do screenings on court days, some only, you know, some don't have them at all.
That's what Jackson does.
Yeah,
It's just
some of them
on
have a
court days.
full-on, everything all the
They
time.
don't have the budget to man it.
And Buffalo they might do screening on dates where they have high-profile court case. But otherwise, on day-to-day stuff, they have no screen.
But you go to a Claire and even the judges screen.
Yeah,
So-
lacrosse is
Oh,
the
yeah.
same thing.
Yes.
Everybody gets screened. They come through the door, they get screened.
There's lots of things to the security part. I guess, I know this was brought up to this committee a few months ago because the Security and Facilities Committee had asked what the plan was, and you guys at that time said you were gonna table it. I guess just know that the Security and Facilities Committee, if you want a recommendation from that committee, you just have to ask. We do have a meeting tomorrow. And they meet quarterly.
And who's on that committee?
Noon?
It's by statute, it's of who we have to have, and then we've added other people over the years, but who have asked to be on it, but.
It's like the judge, Tim, like the DA's
Certain,
office.
certain people within the county have to be on this.
well, that's a good
The
start.
Board chair has to be on it.
That's a good start, I like that.
So we had asked you guys if you wanted our opinion, or you wanted a recommendation from that Security and Facilities Committee. And at that time, this committee had said, let's table it for now, we want to talk about it later. There's just gonna be some work into that, because there's gonna have to be training, there's different things that are gonna have to play out. Procedures are gonna have to be created by the county board at like a full county board level. Now, obviously, you know that takes, you have to go through all the committees, so it is gonna take time. So in order to have it implemented on opening day, it is something that you guys are gonna have to figure out sooner than later.
I mean, I guess we gotta decide is, are we going to secure the building when the public, the general public has access to the building? And that's really the biggest thing. After hours, do we completely lock it out where nobody can get in? Or do we say, hey, department heads, you have access with your card reader, you can get in. If one of your employees needs to get in, you can work out a time to meet them there or something like that. I mean, you're never gonna eliminate the situation that, Jeremy, you brought up. I get it's a great point. You're never gonna eliminate that. So what's the problem we're trying to solve? I think it's limit our liability the best we can, and secure it the best we can. Start with business hours. That would be my suggestion. So.
Just one thing to keep in mind too is that you're never going to stop every threat that could come to a building. It's the immediate threat that you want to try to avoid. Just like we don't have bulletproof glass in windows of our main office areas because we're hoping that the front security is doing what they're supposed to do to eliminate the threat. But obviously, there's still a chance that somebody could get in the courthouse with a gun. And so it's like you're taking those steps, what you can, but if an employee gets fired at 2 o'clock, they are very mad right now. And so they could go out to their car, get a gun, come back into the courthouse because they're mad right now. And having that, you're eliminating that right now, heat of the moment situations is what you're eliminating by having employees go through screening. Versus, yes, you know that they could still come in on the weekend and plant something, but they're gonna have to sit and stew about it, and if that's gonna happen, they're gonna do it no matter what. I mean, that's what the statistics will show, and we have a lot of stuff on that can be presented if needed.
On another topic, I know it's too late to add this to your agenda for tomorrow, but can we request that the Security and Facilities Committee send a representative to this meeting at our March meeting, which would be the 13th of March, and we can continue this discussion, and your representative can kind of bring forth some of your committee's feelings regarding how we proceed with this.
The only thing I would say is that the committee as a whole would need to vote on what the recommendation would be to this committee. And so we would almost have to have time for that committee to meet, talk about what their recommendation would be, and then present it to you. So if that's what you're asking, that you want the security facilities to give a recommendation, I can let the Security and Facilities Committee know.
Why don't
Obviously,
we
I'm on the committee, so-
hope to have Security and Facilities rep be at this meeting in April then? So you can get it on your, maybe have a meeting, I don't know if you can even discuss it tomorrow, you only meet quarterly, right? Well, we need
Last
to.
time we did create a subcommittee to come up with a recommendation. They presented it to the Security and Facilities Committee. Everybody voted on it and approved it, and then that's what was submitted to the county board as their recommendation.
And how long ago was that? It's a document then.
Actually, it was a presentation we did in closed session, because of the security issues that we brought up in the courthouse. We didn't want that to the public.
Is that 2 years ago?
No, this was way before that, 6 years ago, I wanna say, around there.
Anybody still around from that subcommittee?
I think just me.
Well, there you go.
Because it was HR, Amy Springle was there, Harlan Reinders, and who else was in there? Were you part of it, Mom? I can't remember.
I might have been,
No, I don't think you were in the subcommittee part of it.
What time do they meet?
Tomorrow, we meet at noon.
You got 24 hours, you can amend the agenda.
We actually don't have to post our agenda because we're not under
Well, there you go.
the law, so I can add it.
Well, I'm gone.
If you want.
Yeah.
officials on it too.
That's why it is only the county board chair that is on the committee. So we just have to be careful that all of you don't show up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to get a quorum.
Right.
Well, we have to have like 9 people there.
Well, I'm just saying, just so you know. I don't know who's all going
Well,
to come.
actually, 3 of us specific committees.
Well, can we ask you to bring it up tomorrow?
Okay.
And with the hope that something can get put together for March.
More than likely, what is gonna happen is what happened the last time, which is they create a subcommittee, have them prepare something, and move forward.
And the unfortunate part of that is your committee meets quarterly. We need to make a decision, an informed, intelligent decision, quicker than that, I guess, because this stuff is gonna all of a sudden be here, and we need to have things in place.
By October.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it would help if you guys could come up with show us the things that you had prepared for the last time you presented it. And so we could just read through it and get some kind of idea where
I do
the
know that the
mindset
sheriff
is.
was I just talked to the sheriff about this prior to the all-staff training day, and he did take bits and pieces from our presentation that we did back then and incorporated it into his presentation. So we do have it, it's just not as some people are up anymore, so.
Yeah, and some of this is gonna be, the sheriff's input is gonna have to be
Yeah.
involved as well.
He is on the Security and Facilities Committee too, so I guess you could put this on your agenda for March and we can see where we're at.
Yeah.
And then move forward. It might not be until April.
All right.
Can I add to that agenda item, the rent?
Yes.
If you want to talk about that too? Okay.
So moving on to item number 11, the usuals. Update, it's Samuel's Group Venture, IT department updates, maintenance department updates. I think we want to discuss recording and televising all meetings. Meeting room policy, we can include the rent charged along with security. Anything else for next meeting's agenda? That should do it for now. And keeping some consistency in meeting times and dates, 8:30 on Monday, March 13th.
March 13, right?
Yep. Anything else? I'll adjourn this meeting at 10:59 a.m.